In this video, I want to share with you a preset I've made for a pop punk drum kit using all complete stock Logic sounds. So let's have a listen to how the drum kit sounds, and then I will walk you through what's going on. I've also made this drum kit using all stock Logic plugins, and I thought it would be a fun challenge because I made another video where I was showing a preset I'd made for some pop punk drums in Superior Drummer 3. But then I thought, yeah, not everyone owns that program, and it might be fun to just try and make something similar using all stock Logic sounds. So in my opinion, this is a lot more pop punk sounding than any of the stock presets that come with Logic for the Logic drum kits. So hopefully this is helpful for some people. I'm going to just show you some of the setup here and how I achieved this sound. So if we go over to our patches here, under drum kit, multi-channel kits, I just selected unmixed and basically started from scratch. So there was no plugins on any of the channels. So the first thing is drum selection, and this was the punchiest kick I found for this kind of music, just deep and punchy. So I selected that. Again, very punchy fat snare. So I've got that one there, turning down the gain slightly. And then I've got the maple toms and the modern dark cymbals. And this actually should be, yes, that's better. Modern dark. So that's our drum selection setup. And now I'll walk you through the processing that I've got going on. So if I open this here, you can see I've grouped my two kick drums together. So the kick in and the kick out mic, both of these are going to bus 3, which shows up here. And so I'm doing most of my processing on the group of both the kick in and kick out mic. So on the kick out mic on its own, I've just got a little bit of EQ. Sorry, this is the kick in mic. I've just got a little bit of EQ, boosting a little bit of mid range, and on the kick out mic, this one I'm filtering off all of the top end. So this is mainly being used as a sub mic. So on its own, the kick out mic sounds like this. And on its own, the kick in mic sounds like this. And then together they sound like this. What I might do is just turn off all this processing on the kick drum bus, and then we can hear what I'll turn off also all the processing on the drum bus. We can hear what the raw kick drum sounded like, and then I'll start adding the plugins back in. So this is the raw kick drums on their own, just with that little bit of EQ. So the first thing is a tape delay actually, which I'm just using for tape distortion essentially. So the delay is turned all the way down, 0 milliseconds, 100% wet, and I'm just using this to add a little bit more low end and yeah, a little bit of saturation. So next thing is just a little low cut down around 36 Hertz. And then we've got the Fat Effects plugin using just a little bit of saturation here to add some fatness to the kick drum. Next, we've got the Neve EQ and turning up the drive a little bit, boosting some mid-range. Then we've got some compression. Then we've got this big boost at 54 Hertz. So this is a 6 dB boost at 54 Hertz. And it just adds that modern low end back into the kick drum because yeah, that's just super important in modern music these days to have that really subby kick drum. And then finally, the Pultec, looks like this one's just boosting a little bit of high end at 6K. And then that's the kick drums fully processed. So moving on to the snare drum. So this is the snare drum on its own, and I'm just using the snare top mic here because I found that the bottom mic just wasn't really adding anything useful for this kind of sound. So just using the top mic. So on its own, it sounds like this. So the first thing I'm doing is an EQ move, adding a bunch of low end around 120 Hertz. And that sounds like this. And I'm also driving this, this is just dimed just all the way up. Then some compression. Adds a little bit more snap to the snare. Next, we've got some saturation, just using the Fat Effects again. Saturation set to 54%. Then we've got a little bit of EQ, boosting a little bit of the fundamental, taking out some of the ring, right around 270 Hertz, and then just a broad mid-range boost around 1.5K. So that sounds like this. Some more EQ here with the Pultec, and looks like I'm boosting a little bit of 8K, and I've got the drive turned all the way up. So that sounds like this. And then finally, I've got a little bit more compression. I really like this VCA compressor I found for drums in general. I don't usually use Logic's stock plugins. So I'm not too familiar with all the different models, but I would have thought that I would have liked the FET or the Studio FET or the Vintage FET, but I actually found that this classic VCA sounded really nice on drums. So there you go. So that sounds like this. Cool. Then the snare is also sending to some buses. So the first bus here I've got is snare fat, and that's basically just to add low end weight to the snare. So with this snare fat channel here, you can see this is sending to bus 4, which shows up here. And so I'm cutting off all of the top end, rolling it all the way back to almost 200 Hertz, and then I'm just doing a big boost at the fundamental. So on its own, it just sounds like this. But when I add it in with the original snare drum, it just helps to add weight to the snare. So I'll start with the snare fat channel muted, and then I'll bring it in. You can hear what it's adding. Yeah, so it just adds a bit more body to the snare. And this gain plugin here is just to flip the phase because, yeah, it just was lining up a lot better with this flipped. And then this send here is going to bus 5, so that shows up over here. And this is just a reverb for the snare because we only have one drum room mic that comes with Logic stock drum kit here. And I just found like that wasn't really giving me enough of the snare room sound that I'm normally used to. So I just set up a reverb on a bus here. So that sounds like this. I'll start with it off and then I'll bring it in. And I'm just using Chromaverb for the reverb here on the digital setting. Moving on to the toms. So that's how the tom ended up sounding. The raw tom sounded like this. A little bit more scooped sounding. So what I'm doing here is just adding a little bit of low end with the Pultec around 60 Hertz and turning the drive all the way up. And then adding some distortion. And then finally just adding a noise gate so that the tom doesn't ring out. Because if we listen to the tom, I'll take the loop off and we can listen to how long this rings out. In fact, if I turn this up, it's easy to hear. Yeah, so it really rings out a long time. And when you've got fast drum fills happening, a really dense mix like pop punk is, you don't want these toms to just be ringing out and muddying up all your low end. So just add this noise gate here, and that will just shorten the tail of the tom. So when the noise gate's on, you just get the impact, the low end impact, but then the tail is essentially cut off because we don't want it to, to muddy up all the mix. So again, with it off, and then with it on. And so I've basically just duplicated the settings here for the low tom and the other high tom here. Moving on to the overheads. So on their own, they sounded like this. So I think I did experiment with swapping the left and right channels to change the perspective of the drummers, but I think I ended up just leaving that off. And then what I'm doing here is just taking out some of the muddy low end because I'm mainly using the overheads channel for the cymbals. And so, yeah, just taking out some of that muddy low end and taking out a little bit of mid-range around 3K just to soften the cymbals a little bit. I just felt like they were feeling quite harsh. So that's what that move is here. So starting with this off, and then I'll engage it. So just thinning out this channel here, just to make it all about the cymbals. And then just adding, looks like a little bit of distortion here. Again, just to try and smoothen out this track a bit as well. Yeah, it's subtle, but it all adds up. The other thing I'm doing here on the overheads track is I've got this, if I right click my pan knob here, I can change it, instead of balance, I can change it to stereo pan. And so I've brought the pan of the overheads in a little bit. So this was what it sounded like originally. So it was just too wide, so I just brought it in a little bit. Yeah, just around there. Just helps to tuck the cymbals in so that it leaves room for electric guitars and stuff to sit at the very outskirts of the stereo field. Okay, so next we have our room mic. So you can hear there's no cymbals in there. It's the same thing I did with my Superior Drummer 3 template, where I'm choosing to turn the cymbals off in the room mic. So I just have the drum shells, and that means I can compress them harder and kind of make them sound more aggressive and distorted without having the cymbals just become super loud and dominate the mix. And so first thing I'm doing is some compression. And then some EQ. Tucking in some of the boxy mid-range. And then finally, looks like this one, I'm not doing any EQ here, I'm just driving the output of this EQ to just add a little bit more saturation. So that's the room mic. And then we've just got this leak mic here, which I guess is just supposed to be a bleed mic for all of the different elements of the drums. That sounds like this. And then I've just put a compressor on it. And that's all of the individual channels that are coming out of Logic's drum kit plugin here. So there's a couple of other things I've got going on. If we have a look at the kick bus over here, you can see I've got this sending to drum par. So that's bus 6. And if I switch that on, that shows up over here, bus 6. So this is essentially a parallel compressor channel for the drums. And I've also got, so I've got the kick bus here, and I've also got this snare mic sending to this bus. And they're both sending pre-fader. So if I solo this parallel channel here, so I've just got really aggressive compression. If I solo the drums, I'll start with this channel muted, and then I'll turn it on and you can hear what it's adding. Yeah, it just helps the kick and the snare to be a bit fuller sounding and a bit punchier sounding. The other channel I've got here is this drum dirt channel. So that's bus 7 here on, again, the kick and the snare. And also the room mics are feeding this drum dirt channel. So that's bus 7 here, shows up here, and this is just distortion. So on its own, it sounds like this. But blended in with the track. Just thickens up the drums a little bit more. Then moving on to the overall drum bus. So I've got a channel EQ, which is just doing a high shelf lift around 5.5K, 1.7 dB lift there. So that sounds like this. Then we've got a compressor. So this is the main drum bus compressor, the vintage VCA compressor here. Not hitting it super hard, and it's just a 2-to-1 ratio, slow attack, fast-ish release. And I haven't got the mix turned all the way up as well, so there's still a little bit of dry signal coming through. Next up is the Neve EQ here. It looks like I'm adding a little bit of mid-range, 1 dB at around 1.5K, and then just driving the output all the way again. That mid-range there is really important to the overall drum sound and just helping the drums to cut through, especially once you start adding bass and electric guitars to this. That will help the drums to cut through that wall of guitars a lot. Moving on, we have the Fat Effects, and again, just using this for distortion, a little bit of saturation, a little bit of very drive here, and this is only set to 30% mix, so it's not a lot, but it's just kind of like a parallel saturation thing happening here. Then we have another compressor. This one is sort of like another parallel compression on the overall drums bus. So using the classic VCA compressor setting here, in Logic stock compressor, set to 20-to-1 ratio, so very aggressive, basically limiting, and the mix is set to 16.5, so only a tiny bit of this is getting blended in, but it's still mostly dry signal. Then the final thing I've got on the drum bus is just a little bit more distortion, And again, just in parallel, blend it in only a tiny little bit. So here's what this sounds like. And you can hear with this one, we're noticing quite an audible loudness increase. It sounds like the drums are just getting louder. But if we take a look at the peak meters here, it's actually not really increasing in peak level. So watch, I'll turn the plugin off and let's have a look at the peak meters. So we're peaking at about -8 dB. Now if I turn the plugin on, it's much louder sounding, but it only increased like 0.2 dB. So it didn't really increase the peak level much at all, but we gained a lot of perceived loudness. So that's the main thing that this is doing. So yeah, I thought that was a fun little challenge to do. Hopefully that's helpful to see how you can use Logic stock plugins along with Logic's built-in drum kit designer here to try and get close to something that you might be able to use in a modern pop punk production. Certainly I would still recommend getting something like Superior Drummer 3 and the Death and Darkness expansion if you do want the best of the best sounds, but it seems like this is still usable. If you do this kind of processing and if you tweak with Logic stock sounds, you can still get something that's fun and that you can make great tunes with. So what I'll do is I'll leave a link to this preset in the description, and I've basically saved it as a patch here under user patches. So if you download this patch, you should be able to paste it into this folder on your Mac, and it will then show up within Logic, and you'll be able to load it in using all of the plugins and all of the settings that I've got saved here. So that folder is under your user, so your username, and then music, audio music apps, patches, instruments, and then the patch. If you paste the patch in there, that should show up within Logic and you should be able to load it. I believe that's the way it works. I'll leave a link to that patch in the description. Hopefully that was helpful for you, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.